Keep yourself in the loop of everything football on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. The latest news on and off the field, be it college football, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC to the NFL. We've got you covered. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you to everybody that is listening. Whatever time, whatever day it is that you are listening to this show, we always appreciate it and we are very blessed to have you here. This is the GSMC Football Podcast brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am Kayvon, your host as always, and we've got a fun show in store today. First of all, just want to start off the show by, letting you guys know, coming live from the good old studio in Raleigh, North Carolina, also known as my bedroom. And it's technically not live. I mean, I'm recording this live, but you guys are not going to hear it live. And I also want to give a big thanks, a big shout out. Sometimes I forget to do this, and I'm sorry, to my producer, Sarah, who's back in California at the Golden State Media Concept Studio, doing all the great things she does for this show over there. Everybody working over at the Golden State Media Concept Studios. You guys put in all the work. You make us sound good. Put in all the music, all the commercials, all the ads, all that stuff. So we're always very appreciative of some of the stuff that you guys do there for us to make this show the show that it is. And we're very appreciative for our great listeners out there. Give a woo-woo. I know that you guys have been awesome. The ratings have been going up, and we want to keep them going up the way they have been. So we've got a fun show in store today. And before we get into what we're going to dive into, I really don't think it's a stretch to say this at all. But I would say that the next 2 weeks are the most important weeks since this pandemic has happened when it comes to getting sports back on a nightly basis. I don't think that's hyperbole at all. I think that these next 2 weeks are seriously the most important weeks since this pandemic has happened, that if we're going to get sports back on a nightly basis, if it's going to be back to what we used to watch it as diehard sports fans on a nightly basis, where, you could just turn the TV on and tune into something every night. Is it going to be normal? Is it going to be like we used to watch it? No. But this is going to be an ideal time to see if we're going to even get that back. And, we have baseball starting in 2 days. Today's Tuesday. That opening day is Thursday. The way that first week will go for baseball is going to be very, very telling for how things go with football. Football will be watching baseball. And I know a lot of you guys say, how does that make any sense? They're two completely different sports. That is true, yes, obviously. But they are two sports that are most similar in terms of they're doing it outside of a bubble. They're the biggest teams, You got NBA in a bubble. You got NHL in a bubble. MLB and NFL are the two sports where they have to fly from city to city. They still have to go to the games. Washington still has to go to New York. New York still has to go to Washington. And that's what's going to have to happen with the with the NFL. So they're going to have to watch this. And you better believe they are. All these commissioners are watching all these other sports to see how things are going, to see if they can take a playbook out of everyone's, a page out of everyone's playbook. And then, we got the NBA starting next week. NHL's right around the corner. It's a massive week for college football. We should be getting some type of answer on what is going to happen either this week or next. We're starting to hear a lot of things as someone that works in scouting and recruiting, we're starting to hear a lot of things for high school sports. A lot of states are moving their high school sports back a couple weeks, a month. Some are even canceling it, and some are moving them all the way to spring ball. So we're starting to get answers, which is always good in a pandemic like this. When we've gone so much without answers, and I'm obviously just talking about the sports side of things. The health and safety of the world is still always in question, and all we can do is just pray and hope that things will get better on that end as well at some point soon. But what we have now is, and the way we're going to start this show is what's going on with NFL, and we're going to do. We have a lot of news coming out of the NFL versus the stars of the NFL, and the NFL versus the NFLPA, and why they're starting to come together and clash now. But are they really clashing? See, we're going to get into that, and then we're going to do 2 segments of division talk. All right, if you guys remember a couple shows ago, I told you guys that starting every show, we're going to break down a division so that we're all caught up, we're all prepared, we all have the knowledge that we have going into the season, hopefully if the season starts and happens, right? Well, the last couple shows, we've been really busy with some topics, the Chiefs signing Mahomes, Chris Jones getting signed, the Washington organization, and every bad news that has come out of there recently. So we've been busy where we can't get back on track with that. So now it's been more of a light week when it comes to news. So we're going to just break down the big news of the NFL versus the NFLPA, and then we're going to get into division talk. We're going to take down the AFC East. We're going to break that down, give you our predictions, give you our winners, give you our records, all that stuff. And then we're going to break down the NFC North. Same thing. Predictions, subtractions from teams, additions from teams. Who got better? Who got worse? Who do we see as the underdog? Who do we see as the winner? Who can make some noise in that division? All of that fun stuff to just give you guys an idea of where I see the division. And then you guys can always debate me and tell me if I'm wrong, if I'm right, whatever you think. So let's get it started with what is happening in the NFL. And that's with what we saw happen the other day in the NFL was really remarkable in my eyes. The NFL stars stood up and they said something. The NFL is the one league, and we talked about this on the show recently. I mean, actually, since we've started the show, it's the one league that got to sit back and wait, but they didn't have to go through everything in real time like some of these other leagues did, like MLB having to start their season, like NHL and NBA having to pause their seasons and figure out what to do from there. But now they're getting a taste of the medicine. Now they're seeing what every other league had to go through. And this is their players stepping up and saying, hey, what's the plan here? What's going on? Just like we saw every other player in every other league do the same thing. But this was different, okay? And this is how we're going to start the show, because I'm not going to lie. What I do, guys, when I prepare a show, I have a couple days in between each show to prepare and to come up with topics. And, the segments, they have to be about 20 minutes long or longer. So there's a lot of content that has to go into each segment. So I have a notepad next to me, and I've told you guys this before on a podcast, but I write down notes. Whenever something comes in my head, whenever I see breaking news, whenever something happens, I jot it down. And then I put little bullet points and what are my thoughts from that breaking news and what's happening. So when I first saw the NFL stars tweeting out all this stuff about, they want to play, but the NFL is not providing safety, I immediately wrote down, and I'll read it to you. With my handwriting so ugly and hard to read that it's kind of hard to tell, but I wrote down, this is a mess. This is going to get really messy. It's going to get really ugly, but they'll figure it out. That's what I wrote down. That's what I thought was going to happen. Well, not even less than 24 hours later, it gets worked out. And I want to start by giving the NFL stars, the players around the league, a huge round of applause. I hope that didn't hurt you guys' ear wherever you're listening to this. But the players deserve this round of applause, okay? The NFL players showed the way to use their power in a proper way to get what you want. They did it right. The stars did it right. I mean, let me read you some of these names that tweeted out on Sunday night. You had Drew Brees. Drew Brees, one of the biggest, most famous quarterbacks in the NFL, say, we need football, we need sports, we need hope. The NFL's unwillingness to follow the recommendations of their own medical experts will prevent that. If the NFL doesn't do their part to keep the players healthy, we cannot play. Hashtag, we want to play. Get it done at NFL. Todd Gurley, you want to watch football this year? Us players need to remain healthy in order to make that happen. The NFL needs to do their part in order to bring football back safely in 2020. Hashtag, we want to play. Myles Garrett, if the NFL doesn't do their part to keep players healthy, there is no football in 2020. It's that simple. Hashtag, we want to play. Russell Wilson, I am concerned. My wife is pregnant, and NFL training camp is about to start, and there is no clear path on player health and family safety. We want to play football, but we also want to protect our loved ones. Hashtag, we want to play. See, this is done. We're talking about real star power here, right? Like real stars, people that tune in to watch the game because of these names right here that I just read off. And what these stars did, the reason why they deserve such an applause is they came together and they clearly had a meeting about it. Every single one of them talked about it, and they went about it in unison. They used their power to get the message out there, not in a messy way, not calling out the NFL in a way that NFL players the Major League Baseball players and the Major League Baseball commissioner in the front office was going back at the players. It wasn't that at all. They were just simply stating, we want to play. And that's why I know they all did this together, because they all made sure to put that hashtag on the end, so they let the fans know. They let the owners know even. Look, we're here to play. Yes, that's for sure. I mean, we're telling you guys right here, we want to play, but also this is a pandemic. It's not just us that we're worried about. We're worried about our families. Russell Wilson told you right there, how can we go out there and play a contact sport and then come home every night to my wife who has a baby, who has a baby inside of her? I mean, that's scary. None of these players want to go through that, but they want to play. So they want to make sure that the NFL is going at it the right way, and that's why they stepped up. And that's why they did it together, and that's why they deserve a round of applause, because it wasn't a bunch of different messages coming at each other. And different angles and different people talking about different sides of the story. No, it's all the same message coming from different people with the same impact and the same concept, and that's, we want to play, but we want to be healthy and we want to protect our families. So NFL, protect us, and then we can play. And guess what the NFL did? Not even 24 hours later, they listened and they answered. Guys, this is one of the first times that we've actually seen the NFL players have power in a situation like this. We always hear NFL players talk about how, man, the NBA players, they have so much power. We don't have that. The NFL, because they went about it the right way, they got the power right here. And they used it perfect. And the NFL listened, rightfully so, and they answered, and they did it swiftly. That's what I love about it. They didn't, and that's why the NFL deserves credit too, and Roger Goodell deserves credit as well, because they answered. They didn't just sit around for a little bit. They didn't kind of put out more nonsense to the media of, we understand what the players want, but it's kind of hard to do that right now. We don't want to pay money for testing, blah, blah, blah. No, They said, okay, Roger Goodell got the owners together. They had a meeting. Boom. They came up with an answer, and they did it quick. So the NFL showed they're listening to their stars. They didn't wait and try and stir up the pot. They went at it right away. And it really did feel like it was going to get messy for a second. I'm not kidding. I wrote that down. I said, oh man, here we go again. Another sport going to get messy. But it didn't. And I understand Roger Goodell hasn't always looked the best in the past. He's dropped the ball on some very important issues, and there's no denying that. But all in all, he's a good commissioner, and this is what happens when you have a good commissioner. He listens when his players are right. So, let's look at what the players were asking for, and what did they get? What answers did they get? First of all, testing was the biggest thing. And this is crazy to me, but for some reason, the NFL owners didn't want to test every day. And it's not for some reason. The answer is because they didn't want to pay that money. You have to test every day if you want this to work, okay? Too much money, spending too much money is nonsense, and it's an answer that cannot be done or said during a pandemic. If you want to play sports during a pandemic, you cannot spare a dime. You can't. And I know that's easy for me saying, someone that isn't, I'm spending the owner's money for them pretty much by saying this. But that's how it is. Guys, look at the NBA. The NBA created $1 billion bubble. Did they spare a dime when they created that bubble? No, they didn't, because they knew the only way to get this right is to do it the right way and spend the amount of money that we have to spend. And now look, they just tested again, and not one player has tested positive. Knock on wood it stays that way, because that's good news for the NFL. So the NFL learned, and they said, you're right. We need to make sure that we test every single day. So what the NFL came out and said they'll do is they're going to do daily testing for the first week, 2 weeks of training camp. So they're going to test every player every single day for the first 2 weeks of training camp. After that, if the positivity rate is below 5% after 2 weeks, testing shifts to every other day. If positivity rate is not below 5% after 2 weeks, daily testing continues until it drops below that. If positivity rate hits 5% at any point, league returns to daily testing. So they came up with a plan. They said, look, we're not going to keep testing every single day throughout the season, but what we'll do is we'll do this. We'll test you every single day until we're down to less than 5% of a positivity rate. Then after that, we can move forward. And that's fair. They came up with a legit plan, and I respect that. The NFL players got what they wanted when it came to testing again, and rightfully so. Now, the other thing the players wanted was, and this is a big deal. Testing was the most important, obviously. To keep these players safe and healthy, that was the most important. Now we're looking at the storylines in between the lines. And the players wanted to cancel the preseason. If you guys remember, the NFL has already canceled the first 2 preseason games, and the players wanted the last 2 gone as well. One of our first shows, we were talking about how a shortened preseason and all season is going to affect these players and coaches, especially the new players with the new coaches. Well, the owners gave in, and they decided that they will go with 0 preseason games for this season and this season only. This is not something that's going to happen moving forward. It might eventually, but it's just for this year. Look, I understand why players don't want preseason games. Look, I personally don't think preseason games are fun. They're boring. I get it all. But I also think that this is not a good move, especially during a year like this. 4 preseason games, that's way too much. I'm all on board. But 2 preseason games, and at least 1 was needed during these times. Look at some of the players around the league. You guys, we find these players through these preseason games. You get those, the last couple players that make the roster through these preseason games. You're going to miss out on those players now. We're going to lose those players this time. and this might be even more important, it takes away the chance for these players to start hitting each other. This is a contact sport. They need to start hitting each other at real speed, in real game shape. I'm not talking about hitting your own team. I get it. Preseason games are a bit of a joke. Trust me, I've said it many times. I agree with that. They are worthless. A lot of the years they are, especially all four. But on the contrary, there is a lot of good that comes out of a preseason game. Having one or two of them a season can get these players in shape. This is a contact violent sport. So now for young teams, it's going to be tough. I mean, it's going to be real tough. For young first and second year QBs, this is going to be brutal. If you go and look at the NFL offseason and training camp rules, you can only have 14 padded practices. 14 padded practices before the start of the season. You think that is going to get these guys up to speed? You think that's going to get these guys into these NFL bodies ready to take hits and hits? It's going to go no preseason and then right into a legit week 1 game that counts towards your standings. Trust me, coaches are agreeing with me on this. They love dress rehearsals. Look, coaches are psycho, okay? They let's just say it for what it is, okay? You have to be a different kind of person to be a football coach. These coaches love their routines. They love being able to do dry runs, which is playing a preseason game, running through the motions, seeing what they have and what they don't have. Which brings me to my point of this is going to really show, once again, the separation of the really equipped and on top of things organizations versus the lackadaisical, not always prepared, or not very well run organization. The organizations that are better at manufacturing game-like scenarios in practice, the organizations that are able to implement real game speed within their team battles, you're going to see those organizations stick out from the others. Those organizations will be the ones that get off to the hot start. The coaches that are able to put together a game plan and say, all right, how do I create reps for my young players that I want to get looks at? How do I create situations for my young quarterback to be prepared for real game action? Every team will not be able to put together this type of plan and this type of preparation during a pandemic like this. It takes a lot. It takes the whole organization and the intellect of that organization to help out. Does your team have veterans that your coach can lean on and use as an essential player coach, where these veterans can help carry these rookies along? Because understanding the playbook, understanding the daily routine, understanding your meal plan, understanding how weightlifting goes, all of this while trying to stay safe and follow the rules so you don't get exposed or expose others to the virus, these are all super important things. And a preseason can help move that along. So again, I understand a preseason is boring. I've heard it. I've preached it myself. It's not the most exciting. But the implications, the deep implications that come from these preseason games help teams get ready for the beginning of a season. And all I can say is your team, my team, a lot of teams out there are going to be hurt by this. Get ready for slow starts. Get ready for ugly football. And most importantly, but I pray this doesn't happen, get ready for injuries. When you put these big physical players out there where they're hitting full speed against other teams, other players on other teams for the first time, it's gonna bring injuries to the table. I hope I'm wrong. I hope it doesn't happen. But you all understand how physical this game is. And it's tough. It's tough. It's gonna be brutal. But with all that being said, we want football back. And if that means no preseason games, if that means pushing it back and having a longer offseason of practices, and that equals football, albeit maybe some ugly football at first, whatever. Because that is what I want, and I think that is what most football fans around the world would say that they want too, because we just want football. This is the GSMC Football Podcast. I'm your host, Kayvon Izami. Thank you, everyone, for listening. We are going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we are going to do some division looking. That's right. Who's winning the AFC East? I mean, come on. It's got to be the Patriots again, right? It's been the Patriots the last 12 straight years. But wait, Tom Brady, Mr. Uggs himself is down in Tampa. Does that change, or does it not really matter? Find out right after the break.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's gsmcpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
What's up? We are back. Hello, everyone. I really started for a second that I was going to go right back into singing like I did last episode when I was singing some Eminem. But then I was like, that would be too much. That's just, you can't do it twice in a row. You know, that's something that just popped in my head right when I came on. See, the funny thing is, I don't produce the show, right? So we have a producer, as I said in the first segment, out in California, who she puts her name's Sarah, she puts the whole thing together. She adds the commercials, you know, the ads, all that stuff, the music, everything. So I don't know what music is coming before my segment here. You know, otherwise, you know, if I knew, I would be jamming out to that music. You know, I'd maybe even give you guys a little vocal lesson here and there after, but I just don't know what's coming up. So I can't give you guys the pleasure of hearing me sing that song or maybe even talk about that song that we heard. I know usually we just do instrumentals, which is cool. There is this one hardcore rock song, because I always like to go listen to my podcast after it comes out. My boss always told me, Andrew Tate, by the way, shout out to him. He always told me to wait 24 hours after you post it. You know, after you send it into the producer and they do all the work that they do and then post it, then listen to it, wait 24 hours and listen to it, and, you know, you'll learn. You'll learn what you messed up on, what you did good on, what you need to fix. And so that's what I've been doing, and I've been taking notes while I do it. And sometimes I get a kick because this one segment comes on and it's like, this one song comes on before my segment. It's like hardcore rock, like just going crazy. And that was probably a really weird voice or noise that you guys all just heard in your radios right now. So I'm so sorry about that. But that's I always hear that and I'm like, man, I can't start. And then I hear myself come on like, hey, everybody, how you doing? And it's like, okay, you got to start this next segment pumped up if that song's coming on. Like, I need to know when that song is coming on so I can start to just come screaming, like, you know, lungs deep into this next segment here. But anyways, those are just some thoughts that come into my head here and there. We thank everyone for joining. This is the GSMC Football Podcast. I am your host, Kayvon Izami. We are entering segment number 2, Solo Dolo, as always. And And we're going to do, so I told you guys in segment 1, and I'm so sorry, I lied to you guys. I didn't lie to you guys, okay? That is a bad word to use because I would never lie to my great listeners, ever. You guys are awesome, you guys are loyal, and I love that you guys listen. But what happened is, I told you guys that we're going to do the intro talking about the NFL and the NFLPA and where everything stands with the testing and the no preseason and all that. And then we're going to enter into some team previews, some division previews. I said we're going to do the AFC East and the NFC North, and then we're going to end it with our fun segment that we always do, which I'll get to in a minute. We're going to change it up a little bit because I realized after finishing that first segment that I have some other things that I really want to dive into about what's going on with the NFL. And since we're so close to this season happening or not happening, I mean, this is a really relevant topic. Like, we need to discuss this topic. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to push back the NFC North preview for next podcast that will come out Sunday morning. So for all you NFC North fans, look out for that one, and we'll go into the NFC North for that podcast. What we'll do for this segment is we're going to keep diving in to this upcoming season. I have a solution. I don't know if I would say a solution, but I have an idea that I think can really work, that can be help. That can be a lot of help for this NFL season. I don't want to say it can work because this virus is so fluid, it's so unpredictable that you can't say anything's going to work, you know? You just can't. So we're going to do that. We're going to talk about that a little bit more. We're going to end this segment by talking about the recent news of Antonio Brown tweeting out that he's looking at retiring. We're going to dive into we're going to dive into his career. I mean, the career that man has had, even with some of this off-field nonsense, it's remarkable. And if he just didn't allow himself to go out of control off the field, then he could be he was really setting himself up for one of the best wide receiver careers that we've seen in the history of the sport, which is really a bold statement to say. But if you look at the numbers, and I'll give you guys some of those numbers in a minute when we get to that, it's remarkable. So we're going to do that. Then for segment number 3, we're going to do the AFC East preview. Okay? We're going to look at the Patriots, the Bills, the Dolphins, the Jets, break all that down, all that good stuff down. I've got a couple Patriots fans, some best friends out there that are huge Patriots fans, so they're obnoxious. But anyways, I know they're excited about this episode. And then we're going to end it with our fun segment that we always do. And for that segment, what we're going to do is it's going to be this thing. So you know how preseason MVP awards are a huge deal, right? I mean people love betting and looking at preseason MVP awards, and I'm not telling you guys to go bet your hard-earned money, but it's a huge topic of conversation, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to break down the most likely MVP from the top position groups. So from your quarterback, your wide receiver, your running back, and we understand, we're not dumb here, we understand that the quarterback's winning the MVP. That's just how it is. It's how it's been for years on end now, and you have to have a very big outlier season for a running back or a wide receiver or, dare I say, defensive player to win that MVP award. But we're going to have some fun with it. It's the off season. This is when you kind of take up some crazy conversations. So we're going to dive into the most likely MVP for those top position groups versus the long shot MVP for those top position groups. So, for example, who's most likely to win the MVP as a quarterback? We'll give you that name. We'll give you why. And then who's a quarterback that's a long shot that someone should be looking at, a.k.a. what happened last year with Lamar Jackson. No one thought Lamar was nowhere near the radar of winning the QB. If you guys remember, it was the betting favorites last year going into the season to win the MVP were Baker Mayfield and Mitchell Trubisky. And I think we all know how those season ended up. So, yeah, it's a crazy topic, and that's why it's fun to have. It's sports radio. Let's get into it. We'll do that at the fourth and final segment, so stay tuned for that. Back to the NFL and the NFLPA and the NFL stars. You remember we started this show with a big, and again, I don't know if that hurts your ears in the car, so I'm very sorry if it does, but it just kind of feels fun clapping in front of the microphone sometimes. But we started the show talking about the NFL stars did this the right way. You know, this has been the off season of battles between sports, you know, between the union of the Players Association and the actual league. And, you know, the MLB, that's what we've seen all summer. That is why they're just now starting in 2 days instead of they should have been starting months ago, because they couldn't come together and it got ugly. It got ugly, it got public, and it was just bad. It was bad for the league. It was bad PR. You're in a pandemic, and you have to applaud the players, and you have to applaud the NFL for not letting it get there. Now, there are still some things that they have to figure out, like the opt-out clause. Players can still opt out. Players can say, I don't want to play this season, whether, you know, they have their families at risk or they're at risk. Those are things that they can opt out, but the NFL and the NFLPA has to come together and say, well, what guarantee does that player get? Would that player get their entire contract guaranteed, but they're not playing? How does that work? And then you have to look at it and say, so if they opt out, does that mean they still have their spot on the team next year? Or do they lose that spot? Because someone's got to take it over this year. So those are the questions that they still have to figure out. But from what we saw happen the other day and how we saw the NFL stars reach out, come out as a unit, in unison to tweet out that they want to play, but they want to feel protected. They want their families to feel protected. And then how we saw the NFL swiftly answer that in a calm way without getting any public, without anyone, public criticism going back and forth at each other. They answered it and they said, you're right. We do need to protect you guys more. So we're going to up the testing. So they listen to the players. So I think it's going to go like that because I believe in Roger Goodell. I believe in the NFLPA, and I think everybody wants to play. And I think that the owners don't want to lose money and the players don't want to lose their money. So I have faith in the NFL more than I do in some other leagues. Let's just put it that way. But when it comes to, and for those of you guys that didn't hear, the preseason, the testing, what the NFL is going to do, they're going to do daily testing for the first 2 weeks of training camp. That's what the players wanted, daily testing for every player. If positivity rate is below 5% after 2 weeks, testing will shift to every other day. If positivity rate is not below 5% after 2 weeks, daily testing continues until it drops below. If positivity rate hits 5% at any point, then league will return to daily testing. Okay, so that's what they came up with, and they also came up with that they're going to drop preseason games. No more preseason games at all. So what does that mean? That's what we were diving into before we ended the segment, and that's where I want to get back into this whole topic of what does this mean for your team, my team, all the teams out there with no preseason games. And like I said, and I said it numerous times, I understand the preseason is boring. And I've heard a lot of people saying, Kayvon, this is good. The NFL doesn't need preseason games. It's boring. It's stupid. It's pointless. It's a waste of money. I agree with all of that. But guys, there's different situations. If you don't want preseason games moving forward, fine. This year is different. And to be honest, I think every year you need at least one game, 2 games max, that's it. You don't need 4. 4 is ridiculous. It's absurd. It's just for owners to make some extra money. And it's actually absurd that these owners even charge fans to go watch a preseason game. If they're going to have preseason games, they should make it free for fans. That's what it should be. It'd be cool. Go watch a preseason game, pay for beer, pay for a hot dog, pay for a pretzel, but don't pay for your ticket. That's how it should be for these preseason games if you're going to have it. But, I've heard a lot of reporting on coaches saying, all right, well, what in the heck do we do? I mean, when am I going to get to coach my team? When am I going to get to see my team? When am I going to get to see how my team actually performs in a legit run of how a game should be, aka a preseason? And then I've heard coaches say, well, if they're going to take this away from us, then we're just going to make practice more physical. Well, it can only be so physical because of the new collective bargaining agreement says you can't do back-to-back two-a-days. So these guys can't put on pads in the morning and then again in the afternoon. I'm telling you, this is going to hurt a lot of people. It's going to hurt the last guys on the roster. It's going to hurt the depth of the team. It's going to hurt those fun stories of who makes the team and who doesn't. I hate that I don't remember this guy's name, but you guys remember the homeless guy last year that he had to borrow some money from his friend. He was sleeping behind the Circle K down in Florida. He borrowed some money from his friend to fly up to the Browns training camp. He got invited into the training camp and ended up playing in a preseason game and ran a kickoff back in Odell Beckham's cleats. And the story went crazy. Those stories happen in preseason and preseason only. And I get it, they're few and far between, but those stories happen and they're fun, you know? Again, you don't need 4 games to find the depth of your team. You don't need 4 games to find out the last couple of guys on your roster. You don't need 4 games to find that fun, amazing, heartwarming story. But we want these players to be able to feel what it's like to get back into hitting someone. And without a couple of games, I'm worried as a fan of my team, as a fan of football, as a fan of the NFL, that my team's going to start off slow, that your team's going to start off slow. And then even more important, God forbid, that my player gets hurt, that your player gets hurt. And that's the worst thing that could happen to your team. These are all things that we have to watch as we move forward here because we don't know what they're going to do. Just team on team, you know, offensive, the scout team versus the starters in a real scrimmage, in a physical scrimmage. Those players aren't going to go hardcore for that. If they're not going to start really hitting people until week 1, and that's a disaster. That's a recipe of injuries and injuries and injuries. It is. I mean, think about this, guys. I mean, really, think about this. There are a bunch of positives, okay? There are a bunch of positives here for sure. But there's some negatives. And that's kind of what 2020 is in a nutshell, and I get that. And this is a different season, a different year, a different way of life for everyone, so football will be different too. But think about this. I mean, this year, when if the season goes through, and I hope it does, so I'm going to start with when. I'm going to act like it's going through. When this season goes through and we crown a champion, we easily might just be crowning a champion because that team stayed the most healthy. Not based off the team with the best QB or the team with the most depth or the team with the best skilled positions and the deepest skilled positions. We could easily be crowning a champion this year based off the team that is able to keep the majority of their players from not getting sick. I mean, there has never been a year when the practice squad should get pampered the way they should this season. And you say, Kayvon, what are you talking about? If I'm a coach, I am sending my practice squad home, making sure after every practice, making sure that they are quarantined and that they are getting room service delivered to their room for dinner and breakfast every single day. Every single day. A practice squad, the 16th player on a practice squad is extremely important this year. What about your backup quarterback? I am not letting my backup quarterback getting anywhere near my starting quarterback. You can't. If you had those two together and one of them gets the virus, say goodbye to both. Your backup quarterback now becomes the second most important player on your team, and it always is that way, they say, but this year it really is that way. It's crazy. This is all stuff that we're all working through in real time, but if we're going to have a season, these are things that coaches are thinking about as we go. As we go. I really wanted to get into my idea of what these teams should do. But I'll get into that a little bit later, next podcast or the start of the next segment really quickly, because I want to give Antonio Brown some light here. You know, he tweeted out that he's thinking about retiring. I can't take him for his word. I mean, I just can't, you know. there's been too much up and down with him for me to actually believe that. If I had to take a guess, and it's just a guess at this point, I think that he's not serious. I think he will come back. But if he is, guys, this was one of the most talented wide receivers the NFL has ever seen. Since 2010, okay, he has led the entire league with 837 receptions since 2010. And he didn't even play last year. He played in one game with the Patriots. The second most receptions was Larry Fitzgerald with 780. And the third was Julio Jones with 690. I mean, he was a catching machine. He came into the league in 2010. Played nine games with the Steelers. Only 167 yards. 2011 went up to 1,108 yards. 2 touchdowns. 2012 only got to play 13 games. Dropped down to 787 yards. 5 touchdowns. And then this is when things click. 2013, 16 games, 1,499 yards, 8 touchdowns. 2014, 1,698 yards, 13 touchdowns. 2015, 1,834 yards, 10 touchdowns. 2016, 1,284 yards, 12 touchdowns. 2017, 1,533 yards, 9 touchdowns. 2018, 1,297 yards, 15 touchdowns. 75 touchdowns through his 8-year career. All with the Steelers, 1 with the Patriots in that one game he played last year. I hate to say it, and look, he clearly had a mental breakdown. And that is a real serious disease. That is nothing to joke about. That really can affect someone's lifestyle and the way they think and the way that they go about life. And that's clearly what happened to him here. And he has done some things that I would have never thought in a million years that Antonio Brown would do. And that happens when you have a mental illness. But he has some of the best wide receiver talent. And he was a surefire Hall of Famer a couple years ago. And now, if he doesn't play another down, I don't think you could put him in the Hall of Fame because he hasn't had that long enough career. And I unfortunately think the things that happen off the field will overtake the beautiful, eloquent play that he had on the field. And that's unfortunate because he was a fun wide receiver to watch. The Steelers were better when he was there. The Patriots for that one game were better when they were there. And the Raiders would have been much better for all the games he played if he was able to stay there. He wasn't. And that's unfortunate. And you just have to hope from here that he can get better and that we see him on the field again. But if this is retired for good, he had an amazing season on the football field. For the time that he played, it's not as long as it could have been, and that's unfortunate. But just speaking on what he did on the field, he put up some numbers that we haven't really seen many wide receivers be able to do back to back to back. And that's pretty remarkable. You just have to hope that he gets better and that he gets back on the field and that when it's all said and done, we do talk about his play on the field over some of the things and the knucklehead and dumb things he did off the field. This is the GSMC Football Podcast. I'm your host, Kayvon Izami. Can't wait. We're going to take a quick break. Can't wait to come back and dive into the AFC East, baby. The AFC East. Patriots still on top? I don't know. Stay tuned right after this.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
We are here recording from the studio in Raleigh, North Carolina. This is the GSMC Football Podcast brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Kayvon Izami, and as I said earlier, when I say studio, I mean my bedroom. Nice and cozy as always. We thank everyone for listening. We've had a good couple segments so far, entering segment number 3 of the pod today. And, a little bit of a lighter day in terms of news. Definitely impactful news, but not as abundant of news, So not as many topics going on, but the topic that is going on is extremely important for if we're going to have a season or not. And those are the topics where you really have to dive into it. And that's why we took about 1 3/4 of a segment to do that. Almost 2 segments to go through that stuff. Because, look, the virus is not going to stop. We clearly know that. And football is going to do everything they can to go on. We clearly know that. So it's best that we're all informed, and I'm talking through this just as I'm learning, and every time I learn something new, I just spit it out. Every time I think of something new, every time I ask another question, I say it, because these are all questions that we have to hope the NFL is asking, and I like to believe that they are, because I think that they're equipped to go about this in a certain way. I think that they showed us that last night with the way that they went about answering the NFL stars in a swift way. So I love seeing that, and I just hope that this will give us the chance to get some serious football come September. It's going to be different. It's going to be sloppy at first, but hopefully it's done right. Hopefully there's not as many injuries. Hopefully we can keep these teams safe. We can keep these teams healthy. And, if not, it's going to come down to survival of the fittest. It's going to come down to which team can stay healthy the most. And by the end of the day, when that champion is crowned, it might be a big surprise because, frankly, they just were able to stay healthy better than the rest of the teams. And I guess you could kind of look at that as a positive. You could kind of say, hey, this is going to be a wild season. The NFL is already so unpredictable because of the amount of parity each year provides, because of the best chance to go last to first every single time you step out on the field, every single time a new season starts. Shoot, you put that on top of a pandemic where, players are going to get sick and hopefully just to the point where, it's nothing like hospitalization sick, hopefully no one gets the virus. But if it does come down to that, which, it most likely will because it's a pandemic and it's a contact sport, it's going to come down to which team can stay healthiest and which organization is most equipped to handling that. We're going to dive in here, though. We're going to look at the AFC East, keep going on with our division talk series and break down the teams, make our predictions, so that you guys can have a little piece of evidence, a little piece of what I like to call videotape to throw back in my face if I get it wrong, but then it's vice versa, my friends. It's vice versa, because I'll be standing up here saying, I predicted that. And that's what happens when you get a platform like this. So it's fun. I love hearing from you guys. You guys know my Twitter handle at Kayvon Izami, at Kayvon Izami, Kayvon Ezami. You can also hit me up on the GSMC Football Twitter, which is at GSMC Football Podcast. So let's get into the AFC East. The good old AFC East, also known as the Patriots East. It's cheesy. I know. I get it. I've said it before, but that's what I call them. This has been a division where you are able to make those kind of cheesy jokes year after year when a team wins it 11 years straight, like the Patriots have. So if I want to stand up here and say it's been the Patriots of the East, it has been. And until the Buffalo Bills or the New York Jets or the Miami Dolphins win that division, it's going to be the Patriot East for now. But things are changing, Just because we have to wait for a team to win it doesn't mean we're not getting closer to that actually happening. We have some real change coming in this division here. I mean, the stakes are being raised this year. Every team is getting stronger. Every team other than the Patriots actually ended the season on a positive note. I mean, they were all heading in the right direction. Yeah, you can say Buffalo lost in the playoff game. How is that a positive note? They won 10 games and they made it to the playoffs. That's a positive note. The Patriots, they win 12 games every single year. But this time, they lost the last game of the season at home to the Miami Dolphins, who won 5 games all year. That was an important game because that dropped them out from the 2 seed to the 3 seed. And then they lose their next home game in the playoffs to the Tennessee Titans. And frankly, it really wasn't even that close of a loss. It was a beatdown. So what does that mean moving forward, though? It's still, I used to always, I have a lot of friends that are AFC East fans, and we would always joke about how, look, this is not a good division. It's just not. It's the worst division in football, and it's been that way for a while. But that's not the case anymore. All right? This division put 2 teams in the playoffs last year. Only the AFC South, in the AFC, was able to do that as well. So I personally think the division as a whole is heading in the right division. Like I said, it's not the worst division in football anymore. There is some serious talent and good coaching across the board in this division. So let's dive into the details and the predictions, all right? You know how we start. You know how we start every single division breakdown with our predictions within the predictions. What the heck is that, you say? So we're going to give you the team-by-team predictions as we break the team down. We'll do that as we go. But we start every division breakdown with giving you guys the best coach, the best quarterback, the best wide receiver, the best tight end, the best overall offense, and the best overall defense in the division, okay? Because when you look at football, football's the most team sport out there, right? Of course. But these are positions that matter. These are positions that people pay attention to, so we want to provide some predictions within. Now, remember, these are the predictions going into the season. Things can change halfway. Things can change at the end. This is the predictions going into the season. So, best coach, hands down, Bill Belichick. Look, he hasn't had a losing season as a head coach since 2000. He just hasn't, which was actually his first year as head coach of the Patriots. So, there's a lot of good coaches in this division. There really is. You got Sean McDermott. You have Brian Flores, who looks fantastic, who came under Bill Belichick. But he's still the king of this division. He's still the best coach in football, which makes him the best coach in this division, obviously. Best QB. Look, it's Cam Newton. It's Cam Newton. I wanted to put Josh Allen. I really, really did. And I think by next year, he will be able to take this crown. And this crown will be his. And frankly, it might be his for a long time coming. But not yet. I can't disrespect a former MVP in Cam Newton like that. If this man is healthy, and I get that's a big if, but I'm going into this season predicting that he's going to be healthy, as I said in a couple podcasts earlier. Cam Newton is the best quarterback in this division. He's the biggest game changer. He's the biggest wild card, and he produces the most wins as a solo player in this division. And that's a big impact. Best wide receiver, Stephon Diggs. Throw it up. Look at his stats. Back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons. He only had 63 receptions last year, and he still broke 1,000 yards. The dude's a beast. The dude's a deep threat, and he's going to help Josh Allen a lot. Best tight end. Not that strong of a tight end division, but you got to go with Mike Gesicki. Second-round pick in 2018. Going into year 3 now, and has gotten better each and every year. Last year, he really started to break out. Had 51 receptions on 89 targets, 570 yards, 5 touchdowns. Started to look really good towards the end, and that's what you like to see in a beast, a 6'6", 250-pound tight end like him. Best offense, Buffalo Bills by far. when you have Josh Allen, who's a dual-threat quarterback, Stephon Diggs, Cole Beasley as the slot man, John Brown as the deep threat, you got young receiver Isaiah McKenzie. I mean, this is a really good offense. Devin Singletary, they also drafted Zach Moss this past year out of Utah. Best offense in the division. I don't even think it's close. And then best defense, I have to go with the Patriots. Look, on paper, the Buffalo Bills might have the best looking defense. There's no doubt about it. But just like the best head coach, Bill Belichick is a mastermind on defense. He knows how to get the best out of his players, even when they're not big names. And until I see otherwise, they are going to have the best defense in that division. All right, that is our predictions within the predictions. Let's start with the teams here. Let's start with the Miami Dolphins. Miami Dolphins last year went 5-11. Head coach Brian Flores, I honestly had him as for running of coach of the year last year. The way he coached this team was on a different level. I mean, he really coached this team. Guys, the fact that they started 0-8 and lost the first 4 games, listen to this, 59-10, 43-0, 31-6, and 30-10. I mean, do you guys remember the conversations we were having? We were saying that this is embarrassing for these players to have to go out there. The players were talking about wanting to quit in the locker room. We were calling them a JV team. And what happened? Brian Flores came to work every single day and didn't give up. He worked his butt off. He made the players work his butt off, and the players wanted to work their butt off for him. And he turned the season around. They started 0-8, and they won 5 games. I mean, that is a really good second half of the year coaching job by Brian Flores. And it wasn't just some simple games. They won some real games. Coaching in football matters more than any other sport. More than any other sport, you can impact the game with the way you coach. And Brian Flores did that last year. So they go 5-11, have a great end of the year. They go out and spend some money. So Brian Flores comes under the Patriot way, right? Comes under Bill Belichick's wing. But he's not going that offseason the way Bill Belichick does. Bill Belichick doesn't go out spending big money like this. They go out, they sign guard Eric Flowers. They really need that. Their offensive line is atrocious. Signed the best cornerback on the market during the offseason, Byron Jones, to a massive 5-year, $82 million deal. Bring in some running back help in Jordan Howard. They go out and get Kyle Van Noy from the Patriots, 4-year, $51 million. Edge rusher Emmanuel Ogbah. You know, they start to spend some money. And then most importantly, they draft Tua Tagovailoa. So that's the question. They have a breakout receiver in Devontae Parker, who last year for the first time showed why he was a first-round pick. Career highs in pretty much every single category. Finished with 72 catches, 1,202 yards, 16.7 yards per catch, and 9 touchdowns. 8 receiving. He had the 8th best receiving grade for Pro Football Focus against single coverage, which means he was able to dominate that single coverage when it was just 1v1, which is awesome. Like I said, Mike Gesicki, the best tight end in the division, young, third year, going into his third year this year, but a big 6'6", 250-pound tight end that's showing progress with his hands. This team is heading up in every single category, in every single position. They went out and spent money. Now it's time to put it all together. But once again, the biggest question of it all will be, does Tua play or does Ryan Fitzpatrick play? This is an odd year with COVID. No offseason work. Tua doesn't get to get used to the system, doesn't get used to the way the NFL life is. Is that going to affect the decision of will he start right away? I think so. If I had to guess, he doesn't start right away, but he ends up coming in halfway through the season, maybe a little bit earlier. Vegas has the over-under at 5.5 wins. I am taking the over. I add one more win. I put them at 6-10. That is a jump. That is a good progress for a team that is still rebuilding. So, Dolphins, 6-10, improving from last year, but not winning the division yet or making a wild card yet. The New York Jets. We've got Adam Gase, Sam Darnold. Look. This is just plain and simple, all right? They went 7-9 in 2019, and Sam Darnold missed 3 of those games for mono. I don't know what he was out there doing, but New York gets crazy, and he needs to be careful. All joking aside, seriously, if he stayed healthy, that season could have gone way better. Not saying it's his fault, but that's something that needs to – this is a crucial year for Sam Darnold. All right, the Jets have been in the midst of rebuilding ever since they drafted quarterback Sam Darnold in 2018, and they still have work to improve in crucial areas. This team is lacking a lot of holes. Wide receiver, offensive line, cornerback were all positions that needed to be significantly upgraded this offseason. And it's nearly impossible to fill every need through the draft and free agency. So, Jets fans going into this season, you have two major focuses. If I'm a Jets fan, I am watching 2 things and 2 things mainly. Sam Darnold, will he make the year 3 progression, the year 3 jump that he has to have? Take that next step in the right direction, and then the rebuilding process by the free agents and draft picks that you sign. Will they turn into the right picks? Will they be bust, or did you hit on those picks? These are questions and things that I will be watching if I was a Jets fan. And just as a sports analysis, as a radio host, podcast host, I will be watching so I can talk about it. Excuse me. You know, they re-signed cornerback Brian Poole. Trust me, he played with the Falcons. He's a good player. They bring in center Connor McGovern from the Broncos, 3-year, $27 million, 18 guaranteed. Like these are moves that they had to make because they have to get better on the offensive line. They go out and draft Denzel Mims, the wide receiver out of Baylor. That's great. That's perfect. They need more help at the wide receiver position. And we'll see what happens from there. You know, they got my boy Braxton Berrios. He's a wide receiver, so they'll have him. They have Jamison Crowder. They're bringing in Brashad Perryman to replace Robbie Anderson, who went to Carolina. The defense. Will C.J. Mosley be able to stay healthy? The Jets linebackers had the 3rd worst overall grade in the NFL last season, according to Pro Football Focus. C.J. Mosley was injured all year. He signed a 5-year, $85 million for a reason. He's got to show up. With that kind of money, he's got to be the vocal point of this team. He's got to be the leader on defense. Can he do it? I don't know, but that's something to see. Again, they drafted Mekhi Becton, one of the most athletic offensive linemen we've seen coming out of college. Is he going to make an immediate impact? The whole entire Jets offseason needs to be centered around one thing and one thing only, and that's protecting and making sure Sam Darnold gets better. They brought in Adam Gase for Sam Darnold. 2nd year of Le'Veon Bell with the team. Will he be able to help Sam Darnold out? Will he be able to be the drop-off, dump-off pass for Sam Darnold that they really brought him in to do? And also run between the tackles. Look, he had a bad year last year, but you can't fault him because that offensive line was terrible. I mean, nobody could run behind that offensive line. Vegas has the Jets as a 6.5 win team for the 2020 season. That's their over-under. I'm going under here. Look, I'm a huge Sam Darnold fan. All my friends know that. You know, I as in what I'm saying is when he was coming out of the draft, I said I think he's going to be the best quarterback in this draft. Clearly, I was wrong because Lamar Jackson. He has a chance to still be a legit quarterback, though. He has a chance to still be a real franchise quarterback in this league, but this year is so crucial for him. And it's crucial for the organization to put some help around him because he has not had any so far. So because of that, I'm going under 6 wins, but I'm hoping that I'm wrong on this so I can see some progress in Sam Darnold and in the team, but I just don't know if the team has put enough weapons around him yet, and that's why I'm going under 6 wins. So far we have the Miami Dolphins adding a win to their 2019 season. 5-11 last year, 6-10 next year, okay? But progress all around. The reason why we can't go higher, the offseason's not there for Tua to get ready with the team, and that's going to be a big problem for a lot of teams. The Jets, we have them taking a step back. I hate to say it. Again, I hope I'm wrong. I'm a believer in Sam Darnold, but I don't think the team has lived up to the standards. I don't think they put the progress and the pieces around him that he needs as a young quarterback. And because of that, I also don't know if Adam Gase is the right coach for him. So because of that, I drop it down. To 6 wins. Again, I hope I'm wrong. My buddy Braxton Berrios is a receiver on that team. I went to high school with him, and I like Sam Darnold. I want that team to do well, but I just got to go with my gut here, and my gut is telling me 6 wins. I don't see much of an improvement. We are going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to dive into the other 2 teams, the 2 teams that made the playoffs last year, the Buffalo Bills, the New England Patriots. This is the question. We all knew that the Jets and the Dolphins, they're going to be 3rd and 4th. Who's going to win the division? Can Buffalo finally overcome the mighty Bill Belichick and the Buffalo Bills? We're going to look into that, and then we're also going to do the MVP. We're going to take the quarterback, the running back, the wide receiver position, and we're going to tell you the most likely MVP for those positions, and then the underdog. The player that can come out of nowhere. The player that's the Lamar Jackson of this year. We're going to look into that right after this break. I'm Kayvon Izami. I'm your host. This is the GSMC Football Podcast. We'll be right back after this.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts. Past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
We are back rounding around third base right now. The final home stretch, ready to tag out, finish up the show. Last segment here. I hope you guys have been enjoying it. This is the GSMC Football Podcast. I'm your host, Kayvon Izami. We are heading into segment 4 where we're going to break down the 2 last AFC East teams. To give you guys a recap so far, we have the Dolphins taking a step up, going from 5-11 last year. One of the best 5-11 performances I've seen for a team that starts out 0-8 in the beginning of the season. Brian Flores is one heck of a coach, it looks like. They're going to take a step up. They're going to go 6-10, and I wish I could give them more. I wish I could say, hey, with 7 teams making the playoffs this year, they might be able to be that 17. And hey, if all stars align and things work out, maybe they will. But just with the questions surrounding this offseason, with the limited time that Tua's going to have with his quarterbacks coach, with Ryan Fitzpatrick, with his receivers, I just don't know if they'll be able to make that step. Ryan Fitzpatrick, awesome journeyman quarterback. I mean, seriously, he's a mentor, and Tua came into the perfect spot with Ryan Fitzpatrick being there. And Ryan Fitzpatrick, if he starts, he'll win them some games. There's no doubt about it, but he's not going to get them into the playoffs. So that's why I got 6-10. Like I said, they'll take a step up. It just won't be that playoff step up yet. The Jets, I'm worried about the Jets. I'm worried that they haven't put enough talent around Sam Darnold. I know they drafted Mekhi Becton, the offensive lineman, the beast offensive lineman out of Louisville. I don't think it's enough. I think he still needs more help. They still didn't add many wide receivers. You know, they brought in Brashad Perryman. They drafted Denzel Mims. They have Jay Crowder. They have my boy Braxton Berrios. They don't have that number one receiver, though. They got a lot of depth. It'd be perfect if they could have that one guy, that number one receiver, and then those depth receivers to go with them. They don't have that. And with the offensive line, with Adam Gase in question, I do think Le'Veon will have a better season than he did last year. I think he'll get more accustomed to that offense, but still worried about that team. So I have them taking a step back, going 6-10 instead of the 7-9 last season. Now we head to the Buffalo Bills. And remember, real quick, after we do, the Bills and the Patriots, we're then going to look at the MVP conversation for the three different positions: quarterback, wide receiver, running back. Give you the favorites, give you the long shots. Have some fun with it. Every year, you never know who comes out of nowhere. And I get that quarterbacks are usually the ones that win it, are always the ones that win it. But this is the season where you can have some fun, open up your imagination, see what comes out. So, the Buffalo Bills, it's an off-season of optimism in Buffalo. And the Bills are coming off 3 straight years of strong defensive performances while continually adding pieces to the offensive side of the ball. The result is one of the strongest rosters in the leagues, hands down, and the potential to win the AFC East finally for the first time in several years. After revamping the offensive line and skill position groups over the last 2 seasons, the Bills' 2020 NFL season, it will be one that quarterback Josh Allen is going to need to take some steps forward, because if not, he's going to get some criticism. These first couple years, he's gotten some criticism about his accuracy, but he's been young and he's improved, or he's actually done better than what the experts would think. Let's put it that way, okay? He's overachieved for what a lot of people thought as him coming out of Wyoming. So because of that, he's gotten this kind of pass. Now they went 10-6. Now they won Now they went in the playoffs. They were really close to winning a playoff game. They're now becoming the favorites, and the pressure is going to start to really rise on Josh Allen's shoulders here, and it's going to be interesting to see how he handles that. How does he handle that? I mean, look, it's funny if you guys look at it. You remember back in 2018, that draft, you had Baker Mayfield, the cocky coming out of Oklahoma, just took his team to the college football playoff, had a remarkable season. You had Sam Darnold out of USC, who had one of the best rookie freshman seasons he's had in his first year at USC. You had Lamar Jackson, who was the dual threat stud, who was just that spark, that Mike Vick type player. And you had Josh Rosen out of UCLA. And then you had Josh Allen out of Wyoming. So you had all these names out of these big schools, and then you had quiet old Josh Allen that no one really talked about. Well, now that we look at it, I mean, other than Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen's the best quarterback out of that draft. I mean, obviously things can change, but I don't see it that way. I mean, I think Josh Allen is the best quarterback that is coming out of that draft class. But other than Lamar Jackson, of course. So the second best quarterback coming out of that draft class. And he's the second most accomplished, too. I mean, other than Lamar, he has the wins. Lamar has the Heisman Trophy, though. But Josh Allen has done in his 2 years some very impressive stuff with this team. And now they go and add Stephon Diggs to give him another deep threat, a legit number one receiver to go with John Brown and Cole Beasley. They add edge rusher Mario Addison from the Panthers, who's a low-key, really good pass rusher. They get Josh Norman on cornerback for a steal, 1 year, $6 million, because he's had a couple bad seasons. Whew, he could pop right back into shape, and that could be one of the best deals in football right there. I mean, they went out and spent some money, and the Bills have done a really good job building the offense around the former first-round pick Josh Allen. They really have put him in a way where he can have big statistical seasons and put this team in position to win. Josh Allen has proven to be very hard to defend. He has 1,141 rushing yards, ranked second only to Lamar Jackson among quarterbacks in the last 2 seasons. He has the second most rushing yards among quarterbacks in the last 2 seasons. While he leads the whole NFL with 17 rushing touchdowns in the last 2 seasons, the entire NFL, he beats out Lamar in that part. Now, we get it. As a passer, there's room for both concern and optimism. But they go out and they draft Devin Singletary last year. They draft Zach Moss this year. They're putting out big running backs that know how to put their shoulder down and get some yards. That know how to put their shoulder down on the 2-yard line and get in the end zone. Like we said, the wide receiver, the position's getting deeper. Stephon Diggs, John Brown to go deep. Cole Beasley, the one of the best, slot receivers, undercut throwers in the game. I like what I'm seeing out of this team. The Bills, the Vegas has the Bills at 8.5 as their win total. Give me that over all day. All day. There is no way the Bills are losing 8. There's no way that the Bills are not winning more than 8 games. I mean, this is a lock it up, seal it, put it in the bank right now, and do not touch it. Because that is cash money. The Bills are going 8.5. And of course, I'm totally kidding. Don't bet your hard-earned money. I'm not telling you that. This is just, we're having fun here. The Bills are going over 8.5 wins. They're winning 9. They're winning 10. I think they go 10-6 just like last year. Now, the New England Patriots. It's a new era, baby. It's a new era in New England. Tom Brady is gone. And we were sitting here, I was sitting here a couple weeks ago saying this is going to be the worst team in the division. They are going to go first to worst this year. And then in comes good old Cam Newton, baby. And that changes everything. I am, once again, going into this expecting Cam Newton to be healthy. If he's not, then they will go back to being the worst team in the division, as I said they were going to be before they got Cam. I fully believe that. With Cam Newton, with an innovative Josh McDaniels as the offensive coordinator, with Bill Belichick making sure that his defense is going to be ready to go and one of the best in the league, if not top 5 in the entire league, with the running game going to be sharp because of the dual threat that Cam Newton brings. All of that is going to bring wins. Especially, and a lot of people are saying, man, but this is kind of like, a rookie QB with a new coach, Cam Newton with Bill Belichick. It's an offseason where they're not going to be able to have time to get to know each other. I disagree. Yeah, it's going to take them a couple weeks to get on par with the way that Cam Newton likes to do things and the way that Belichick and McDaniels like to do things. That I get that. That's totally fine. But as I said in my opening segment, this season is going to come down to the organizations that know how to react best during hard times, that know how to react best during crises, that know how to react best when change and new things are coming. And you have to react on the fly. And the Patriots do that better than any other team out there. Because of that, they'll get ready to go. And because of that, Vegas has them as a 9.5 win total. So they have them higher than what the Bills' win total is. And I am going to go over it. I think they go 10-6 with Cam Newton being healthy. I think that they tie the Bills at 10-6. And I think, once again, the New England Patriots win the AFC East. Because of Cam Newton, because of Bill Belichick, because of the ego on both of theirs, because of, I guess you could say ego, but the chip, I'll go with that, the chip on both of their shoulders to prove people wrong, to prove people that they can still win, to prove people that they are still on top of their game and one of the best in the league. Do not doubt 2 players, 1 player, 1 coach, together, both with something to prove. That's a scary recipe. Cam Newton stays healthy in my eyes. They go 10 wins. This is the GSMC Football Podcast. That was my AFC East predictions. Run through them real quick. The Miami Dolphins go from 5-11 to 6-10. They take a step up. The New York Jets take a step down, 7-9 to 6-10. Buffalo Bills stay exactly where they are at 6-10. At 10-6, but they improve. Just because their record doesn't, they improve. The schedule's harder this year. They win tougher games. They improve all around as a team. And once again, the New England Patriots go 10-6, and they win the division for the last year before it's time for the Buffalo Bills to take it over. That is my AFC East predictions. We've gotten the NFC East, the AFC East out of the way. Starting next podcast, we'll get into the NFC North. Now, to end the show, coming down to the final home stretch, ready to slide home, see the umpire call me safe. Trying to use a baseball analogy here since we're 2 days away from opening night. We're going to end this with the fun segment that we like to do to end every show, every podcast, and that is we're going to do, you know how every year the big conversation is who wins MVP. Who's going to win the MVP? And it's always a big topic. So we understand that the quarterback always wins it. It is very, very rare for a quarterback not to win an MVP. We get that. We really do. It's been a long, long time since a non-QB has not won the MVP. So with all that being said, what we're going to do is we're going to have some fun with it, though. We're going to tell you the quarterback that is most likely to win the MVP, and then the quarterback that you should look out for. The quarterback that's going to pop out of nowhere. The Lamar Jackson of this year. We're going to do that for the running back position and the wide receiver position as well. So, we're going to first start with the quarterback position here. And by the way, here, I was trying to look this up real quick. Quarterbacks have dominated the NFL Most Valuable Player Award throughout the league history. The last time a non-QB won the prize was Adrian Peterson in 2012. Before him was LaDainian Tomlinson and then Sean Alexander. They were setting the record for rushing touchdowns in the regular season in back-to-back years. And then the last time a non-offensive player won the award was in 1986 when Lawrence Taylor of the New York Giants took home the honors. So, I get it. It's a QB award now. You might as well call it the most valuable quarterback. But we're going to have some fun and look at it through different positions and different lenses to just, hey, you never know what happens in the NFL, especially a crazy season like this. So, picking an MVP in advance of an NFL season is extremely difficult. Remember last year? Last year, guys, the trendiest picks heading into the regular season were Baker Mayfield and Mitchell Trubisky. Come on. Mayfield and Trubisky, they ended up collapsing. Nobody was talking about Lamar Jackson, who was 50-1 at Caesars Sportsbook to take home the trophy. The Ravens star threw 5 touchdown passes in the opener in Miami and never looked back. This year, trying to identify the league MVP before the season begins is even more difficult. Players are going to be opting out. We have no idea what the regular season will look like. There's a chance that we'll see 16-game schedule in front of limited fans or no fans at all. It's going to be different. So, that's why we should have some fun with it. Let's start with quarterback. Obviously, the most likely pick is Lamar Jackson. We know that, right? You got to start with Lamar as the most likely pick. So, just the man was on an absolute tear. Why not put him as back-to-back MVPs? He came out of the gate last year. He threw for 3,127 yards, led the league with 36 touchdowns, only 6 interceptions, 113.3 QBR rating. He added 1,206 yards on the ground, breaking Mike Vick's record for most rushing yards in a season in NFL history by a QB. He added 7 rushing touchdowns to those 36 passing touchdowns. He went on a tear that no one could stop and no one saw coming, other than the Ravens themselves. But he got embarrassed in the season. The team got embarrassed. They lost their first playoff game at home. after having the best record in the league. And, that's going to leave a bad taste in their mouth, so he's going to come back hungry. So why not? Of course he should be the favorite. They add a really good running back out of college, out of Ohio State, and J.K. Dobbins. Hollywood Brown's going in his second year. The coaching staff stays intact. He's the favorite, and he should be. My pick, not my pick to win it, but my pick for the underdog, someone that you guys should watch out for, Cam Newton. Cam Newton. You guys just heard me. I said that they're going to win the division. One thing that has to happen for you to win MVP, you got to win your division. You have to make the playoffs. You have to win games. Cam Newton has a massive chip on his shoulder. He is mad the way Carolina did him. He is mad that no other team wanted to sign him. He is mad that he is playing for less money than Joe Flacco is this year. The last time we saw Cam Newton, he was healthy, and I mean when he was really healthy, he was 6-2 with the Panthers and had the best completion percentage of his year. The time before that, he took the Panthers all the way to the postseason and almost upset the Saints in the playoffs in wild card weekend. When Cam Newton gets put with a stifling defense that Bill Belichick will have ready to go and an offensive genius in Josh McDaniels, that's a recipe to watch out. And for all those people that are saying, nah, Belichick won't allow that to happen, he's going to make sure they run the ball a lot. He's going to make sure Cam's stats don't get too out of control. Brady won 3 MVPs under Belichick. Let it happen. If Cam is healthy and Cam performs, he will be in the conversation for an MVP. That is someone to look out for. Running back. Running back position. Christian McCaffrey's the favorite. We know that if any non-QB is going to win the MVP in the coming years, it's a very good chance it's McCaffrey. The Panthers running back took the lead by storm last year, collecting 15 rushing touchdowns, 1,387 yards on the ground to go with 1,005 yards in catching in the air, 4 touchdowns in the air as well. I mean, the first 2,000 yard season, 1,000 passing, 1,000 rushing, 1,000 receiving in a long time. He has every tool in the shed. And with this being one of those seasons and the Panthers being one of those teams with a rookie head coach and a new quarterback, look for them to dump the ball off a lot. Look for them to use McCaffrey as much as possible because he's their one constant player that they know will work. McCaffrey, obviously the favorite. The surprise, Dalvin Cook. And it's not that big of a surprise, I get it. Now, my friend Brian Ray, my friend B-Ray, he's going to kill me because he does not think Dalvin Cook is that good. He thinks that he had an anomaly this year, and the seasons before that of him getting injured were more like the real Dalvin Cook. Dalvin Cook had an amazing season last year because he stayed healthy. He's right about that. He is. But if he stays healthy, we saw what he can do. 1,135 yards on the ground, 519 yards in the air, 13 rushing touchdowns. And now he has Gary Kubiak as his OC, who nobody loves running the ball more than Gary Kubiak. He does not want to put the fate of this team's hand in Kirk Cousins. He's going to make sure Dalvin Cook is the one he's going to feed the beast. I think Dalvin Cook will stay healthy. I like Dalvin Cook to have another monstrous season as a running back. And for the wide receiver position, you got Michael Thomas. That's the favorite. We get it. He broke Marvin Harrison's record for the most catches in a season. He has Drew Brees, who knows how to throw slant passes after slant passes after slant passes, and that is perfect for a receiver like Michael Thomas, who doesn't necessarily have the speed to beat you, but he has the hands and he knows how to use his body. That is the most important thing when you don't have physical talent like speed, like Tyreek Hill and Julio Jones and those guys. It's your smarts. It's your body. It's being able to beat them off the line of scrimmage, use your body to get in front of the defender, and have great hands. Michael Thomas knows to do that. He's set up in a perfect situation with Sean Payton as the head coach. They have a lot of weapons around him. He's going to put up stats galore every single year, so he's the favorite. But the person that should be the favorite is Julio Jones. Julio Jones, and hear me out. My man, Quintorris Lopez Jones, baby. That is his full name. And I know you guys are going to say, hey, you're biased. You're a homer. I do love me Julio. I think he's the best receiver in the league, and a lot of people will agree with me. The last time Julio Jones has had Dirk Cutter as his OC for the second year in a row was 2012. Julio went for 10 touchdowns. The most he's had since. He has not had a 10 touchdown season since then. And he didn't even play in all the games. All right? He was injured. He didn't play in all 16 games that year. This year, if he can stay healthy and put up that 1,800-yard season that he did back in 2015, that 1,700-yard season that he did back in 18, with a 10-touchdown season that he did back in 2012, that is the player to watch. He has the speed, he has the size, he has the hands, and most importantly, he has the quarterback to throw him the ball. Matt Ryan is hungry. He wants to prove that last season was a bad season for everyone. He loves Dan Quinn. Dan Quinn's job is on the line this season, and he wants to win this season for Dan Quinn, for everyone else, for the city of Atlanta. And I like it. I like it. I think things will click, and I think Julio Jones could have a low-key, record-breaking wide receiver year. I'm talking 2,000 yards receiving. 2,000 yards receiving. Look out for it. I know it's bold, and it's a bold prediction, and we'll be doing bold predictions before the league starts. This is a bold prediction. Julio Jones could go for 2,000 yards and be in the MVP conversation. This is the GSMC Football Podcast. We thank everyone for tuning in and listening. Wherever you are, whatever time it is that you're listening, I hope you're having a fantastic day. Again, thank you so much for listening. This is the GSMC Football Podcast brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I would like to ask that you please remember to subscribe to the show and write a nice review. That really helps us. Also, if you can, please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You guys know the Twitter handle. Send me your tweets. Send me some questions. Send me some topics. Not only will I talk about them, but I will shout you out. And I will talk about you and the point that you made. And we will battle it out like you're right here talking to me. Thank you and have a great night.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.